How lovely to see you. I'm so pleased you've come. Do make yourself comfortable. Welcome. Hello. Hello. Welcome. Well, here we are. At last. When you are as old as I am, time folds back on itself. Faces melt into themselves and become other faces. And of course, we've known each other since the beginning. So, let us begin. Preface, or self-portrait in lieu of a preface. Some notes on Natalie Barney by herself. 1. Nothing about me must surprise you. I'm an American.
What she means when she says that is that the first thing she did when she got to Paris was seduce the city's most famous courtesan.
The next thing I did was publish a book about it. To call it a scandal would be an understatement.
This was 1900, mind you.
2. I am a writer. And as all writers know, our voices are never ours, but a composite, a synthesis, and union of the voices and thoughts of others.
Oh, get on with it.
Confession in lieu of a self-portrait, in lieu of a preface. I am never alone. So you'll forgive me for invoking other voices. Dolly.
Hello, darling.
The imp on my shoulder, as it were, and the angel on the other. Romaine.
This is a terrible idea.
There is also a ghost, of course.
Renee Vivian. But she exists only in letters. She has no voice.
Like generations of women before her.
The past is such a subtle thing. But in the end, nothing else exists. Everything is made of the past. Even the future. Chapter 1.
A literary litany.
Number 20, Rue Jacob. Each Friday afternoon, the neighbours hang out of their windows to see the best and brightest of the literary world flock to the home of Natalie Barney, Miss.
Ezra Pound. Jean Cocteau. Ford Madox Ford. Anatole France.
Ma chère, come meet the Crosbys from Black Sun Press.
Sinclair Lewis. Paul Valery. Somerset Maugham. F. Scott Fitzgerald.
We're raising money for T.S. Eliot.
Edna St. Vincent Millay. Claude Cahoon. Mina Loy. Solita Solano.
Ma chère, have you met
Sylvia Beach. Breyer. Jane Heap. H.D.
My dear, have you read
Gertrude Stein. Janet Flanner. Margaret Anderson. The poet Renee Vivian.
Whom some say Natalie drove to an early death.
Radcliffe Hall?
Who writes Natalie into the well of loneliness.
The charm of this woman lay in a great impulse towards beauty in all its forms. Here was no mere libertine in love's garden, but a creature born out of her epoch.
Colette.
Who writes Natalie into Claudine and Annie.
She smiled at me without embarrassment till a curious quiver of her left eyebrow, as disturbing as an appeal, made me look away.
Juna Barnes.
In The Lady's Almanac.
And so it was that when she came to die, 40 women shaved their heads. The pyre burned all but her tongue, which was placed on the altar in the Temple of Love, where, it is said, it flickers to this day.
Wait, is this a list of her salon or her conquests?
Both, of course.
And then there was Romaine.
And then there was Romaine.
Thief of souls.
Cantankerous as fuck.
A profound artist, a giant with paint.
You had to stay on Romaine's good side if you wanted to stay. Those were the rules.
My angel.
It's a supreme irony in this story that I end up as any sort of angel. I hate everybody.
She hates everybody.
Monochrome and misanthropic. That's me.
Whereas I belong to everyone, Romaine belongs to no one.
It had to be love. How else to explain the bizarre and enduring pairing of grumpy Romaine Brooks and glittering Natalie Barney?
But we didn't kill each other, did we, Angel?
Chapter 2. A brief interlude on Sappho.
In the garden was a 17th century mystery, a Greek temple with the words à l'amitié carved above the door. To friendship. It was a sign. I took the house at Rouge Jacob at once. The poet René Vivien,
whom some say Natalie drove to an early death.
The poet René Vivien and I had gone to Greece.
Ah, René. Sylph-like, tortured, obscenely talented, essentially irresistible.
The poet René Vivien and I had gone to Greece, thinking to revive the golden age of Sappho. Now, I might reconstruct it in my own backyard and establish a society of female poets dedicated to art, to love, to free thought. Show me a woman who is married and a poet. Show me a woman who is married and free.
Small wonder so many creative women worship Sappho.
Women have everything to contribute to the field of poetry. We slip naturally into the idiom of surrealism, of modernism.
Unfortunately, the idea collapses. After one particularly surrealist, modernist episode with scantily clad women cavorting in the garden at tea time, the landlord threatens eviction.
Alas, like all religions, love has more believers than practitioners.
Chapter 3. Natalie Barney, High Priestess of Love.
My love is a selfish, glorious, god-like thing. It is very theatrical. It is very magnificent. It wields words with an eloquence that few people as sincere
and modest
as I are capable of. It is tearful and tender, persuasive and despotic. It has moments of genius.
She's right, damn it.
And its capacity is boundless. René writes,
You're taking yet another lover to the country, and I wonder what might it take to entice you to spend one weekend in Paris à deux?
Oh, Natalie can have 25 assignations in different parts of Paris at the same time. Take it from me, I know.
My mother writes,
Do you really think it was wise to have published that book of love poems? To René? They're beautiful, dear, but for the sake of your father and the newspapers, consider discretion.
This is how I am. It is not a vice. It is not deliberate, and it harms no one. I see no reason to hide it.
This is 1910, mind you.
It seems to me that those who dare to rebel in every age are those who make life possible. It is the rebels who extend the boundary of right little by little, narrowing the confines of wrong and crowding it out of existence. Love and poetry. These are our tools.
Love? Easy enough. But poetry?
As with life, so with art. As all lovers and writers know, we are no more than a composite, a synthesis, a union of the voices and thoughts of others, and we are only as fine as those with whom we surround ourselves. There are a handful of monolingual salons in Paris, but there is nowhere international writers can meet, and there is nowhere at all for women writers. So, possessed of inspiration and the soul of a poet,
plus a small fortune,
I resolve to bring together the brightest women and men in international literature to build an understanding across countries, languages, and the universal family of minds. I will myself Write and publish as many books as I can. Poems, plays, novels, aphorisms, all celebrating the wonder of woman, and I will apologize for none of it. I will not compromise. I will build my life separate from the suffocating institution of marriage. I will work when and how I like. And I will have as many lovers as I like. My life will be my greatest work of art.
That's easy enough to say.
But being other than normal proves to be a particular advantage. Lovers, writers, they all come.
Chapter 4. So just how does that work exactly?
It really is quite simple.
It's simple enough. Natalie is the sun, and everyone revolves around her.
Choose the rarest people to surround yourself with, the ones who most excite you.
Which means you have to share.
Cultivate the tête-à-tête. Always focus on one person at a time. Gently draw them out about themselves.
Renee and I coexist comfortably enough, but I go out of town whenever there's a new infatuation. No need to be mixed up in that.
Make them feel they are the most exquisite, most fascinating person in the world.
It works because we're all certain of our place in her affections.
Afternoons are best. The light touches everything softly, romantically, and people have energy to spend.
Lovers intercede for her with other lovers, with potential lovers. It's mutually beneficial.
Involve an element of the unexpected. A small boy hidden in the rafters tossing rose petals down at an apropos moment.
I move around a lot to keep things exciting. You miss one another and... yeah, other quaint cliches like that.
Make sure your surroundings are sumptuous, comfortable, inviting.
Live apart.
And never forget that most feminine of weapons.
Visit often, schedule carefully.
Food. If you provide fascinating conversation, people are likely to come. If you provide good food, people are certain to come. Make connections wherever you can. Introduce people to those who could help them, to people you know they'll like. Ma chère, have you met? To things they don't yet know they'll like. Center the salon around a particular event, most often a reading. We introduce the well of loneliness to the world that way when it is banned in England and put Gertrude Stein's The Making of Americans onto the literary map. My dear, have you read... Oh, and do not be afraid to use a firm hand when necessary.
Oh, don't be afraid of a firm hand.
Matahari, ma chère, we're having cookies. You cannot attend on an elephant. It is in bad taste. She comes on a horse instead.
It's too much for me. I keep the hell away from the salon for the sake of our sanity.
Of course, in the end, you see, I am not a bibliophile at all, but a humanophile. I look for rare human beings.
Hello, darling.
Chapter 5. Enter the English.
Dolly Wilde. Oh, eloquent, elegant Dolly Wilde. Niece to Oscar.
Yes, that one.
Sure, she was beautiful. I'm not blind. I'll even give you that she was brilliant, if you like.
It runs in the family.
She is also a train wreck. Drugs, booze, sex, gambling, you name it. I once saw her shoot up, calmly, over the dinner table.
Sometimes the role of knight in shining armor is just too seductive.
Enter Natalie on her horse.
Can you blame me? She glitters. She is utterly, breathtakingly, shatteringly alive. Romaine hates her on sight. Renee senses my growing devotion and begins to panic. She writes,
My darling, She is dangerous to us, to this tender balance in which we all keep ourselves so delicately suspended. Give her up.
Give her up?
Give her up.
Oh, fuck it. Can I come over?
Absolutely.
Natalie?
You have to understand, to love, it's necessary for me to love in multiple, because it's not except by contrast that I can feel and make everybody else feel.
Oh.
It's next to one lover that I fully appreciate the worth of the other, and next to that other that I appreciate the one that I just left.
Yes.
Let me dare to proclaim it's love that I love above everything else.
Oh, yes.
Love is that difficult God whom I adore through each of my lovers, a God whom I cannot attain except through them.
Oh, God, yes.
But I am always faithful in my infidelity.
Yes. Chapter 6. A final letter from Renee. My proud and cruel darling, I have patiently borne any number of injustices which would test the patience of a saint. But this English situation is a step too far. For years,
I have walked after you, like a high-heeled woman whose feet hurt but who is too proud to say so. You are as drugged with all your little passions as all those takers of morphine, valerian and absinthe whom you despise. Well, really, what's the harm in a little...
Go on.
My love was a determined effort on my part to make the best of a very miserable life. There was never...
Wait.
There was never an art or an ambition of yours that my soul loved.
I have protested so many times to others that you were the most kind, the most generous, but now I give up. Somehow it needed this last betrayal to make me see the unpardonable. You are stupid. She painted the walls dark and blacked out the windows. She filled the house with lilies, the airless rooms cloying and sick and suffocating. Her life was one long suicide.
Until, finally, it was accomplished.
My love is a god-like thing.
Natalie, it wasn't your fault.
It has moments of genius.
Chapter 7. If only we could all be haunted by such productive ghosts.
Renee leaves behind a wealth of beautiful, haunting poetry. I devote myself to making the work known more widely.
Altruism, love, guilt.
I establish a prize in her name for female poets. I convince Dolly to go to a nursing home to come off heroin, and I pay for her treatment.
Neither gesture is sufficient.
Then I conceive of something finally important, something grand. I create, inside the Salon, an Académie de Femmes, an association where women writers can meet, read each other's work, and publicly honor one another. Here, at last, is the culmination of the dream begun with the Temple à l'Amitié, begun with Renee in Lesbos, part salon, part workshop, part celebration. But unlike the Académie Française, which forbids access to women, men are welcome to attend. The genius of this is that by welcoming men...
And of course they come, because to be invited to Natalie Barney's in 1925 is more than a pleasure. It's an honor.
By welcoming men, they must inevitably participate in that which they have thus far avoided. the acknowledgement and celebration of female writers, their colleagues. You see, here is the secret. At its heart, a salon is the feminine institution. It is the blending of choice elements into something greater than themselves, a composite, a synthesis, a union. It requires discretion, balance, and a certain degree of self-effacement. It requires delicacy, originality, a love of people, an appreciation for beauty. Ma chère, have you met? My dear, have you read?
Rouge Jacob becomes the beating heart of French letters. It receives the blessing of the French president and survives 2 world wars.
I run this salon for 60 years. In my hands, literary modernism catches fire, and it will be decades before the last of the embers dies out.
If anything ever really dies out. Chapter 8. Our shadows are taller than ourselves.
About the war. The first one.
Time folds back on itself.
Gertrude Stein joins the Red Cross driving ambulances. Natalie stays in Paris.
Well, someone has to hold fast the gates of civilization. Why not me? Why not us? We literary women. Surely the only way to stop this collective suicide of man's is to embolden ourselves.
This is 1915, mind you.
Women would not waste so readily and uselessly lives that they had taken such pains in bearing. Should not the stronger instinct towards self-preservation prevail? If, through all these centuries, the war curse has not been averted but made more terrible, is it indeed madness to hope that women might stop the madness?
Perhaps.
Well, what is there to be done?
A women's congress for peace. Let us gather the brightest women from across the professions and put our minds to the question of how peace might be accomplished. Even Mrs. Pankhurst attends. Rouge Jacob is one of the few places in Paris where one can still voice that unpopular sentiment that war is cruel and senseless. What tools do we have to stop it, to prevent it?
The Congress breaks down when no one can agree on a strategy.
Our art?
And the Second War, Natalie?
The Second War? We escaped to Italy.
Florence.
And the wrong side of history.
We wanted a peace. We had no news, only dispatches from our friend Ezra Pound.
Good old mad fascist Ezra?
Yes, well, he seemed to make sense at the time.
Whatever happened to "it is the rebels who extend the boundary of right little by little"?
And conviction is easier than despair, even when it is misplaced.
Narrowing the confines of wrong and crowding it out of existence.
Yes, yes. Enough. After the war, Dolly is dead.
An overdose in London.
After the war, the bookstores are closed. After the war, people straggle back to Rouge Jacob for food, not conversation. After the war, we piece our lives together, little by little.
The Salon revives. New faces. Truman Capote, Marguerite Yourcenar.
And otherwise a coterie of aging has-beens.
We, who were once the modernest of the modern, are suddenly outmoded. And what have we learned? We slide so easily toward new wars.
Korea, Vietnam, Iran.
Seemingly without the slightest resistance. How are we back here again and again? How is it possible that art means everything and art is impotent?
In the end, there's only decay.
And perhaps love?
Chapter 9. Time folds back on itself.
This will delight you. I'm walking through the park at age 81, and I meet her.
Janine, 55 years old.
Cradle robber?
Youth is not a question of years. One is young or old from birth.
Natalie, no.
I considered that part of my life finished, but she is passionately in love with me.
In the end, there is only decay and love.
Can you imagine that I have met a woman who loves me and wants me? At my age?
But we're going to be buried together?
She really wants me.
No.
My writing soars. I haven't been this productive in years. Decades.
Natalie.
I've asked Janine to live with me.
You... In 60 years, we've never lived with one another.
She's a great comfort to me. And haven't I earned comfort now, so close to the end?
So close to the end. Half a century together and you still can't be content with only me.
Love is not a pie, my angel. It is not finite. I have given no one else what belongs to you.
Only our last moments of peace together. Do what you want with that woman. And don't speak to me again.
She means it too.
Romaine. Angel? My love, please.
And finally, her heart breaks.
The past is such a subtle thing. But in the end, nothing else exists.
Everything is made of the past, even the future.
And so it is that in the end it is the voices of my past which seem to make up myself. And having got more out of life, having got out of it perhaps more than it contained,
our shadows are taller than ourselves.
I can think only of Sappho. You may forget, but let me tell you this. Someone in some future time will think of us. Angel. Dolly? Natalie?
Natalie Barney's last Salon was written by Kelly Burke and directed by Fiona Leonard. Dolly Wilde was played by Augustina Seymour, Romaine Brooks by Lucy Newman-Williams, and Natalie Barney by Kelly Burke. Special thanks to Shakespeare's Globe and Reading Fringe Digital.